interact now. Um, I think a lot of that led me to be very drawn to myself, introverted to an extent, and a lot of self doubt. Um, and with that, as soon as one, I believe, starts doubting themselves, that struggle within you, right? So now that I've had more time to think and broaden my knowledge on this, I see two selves within an individual, right? There's the inner higher, rational, non-emotional being that is making effective decisions. And then there's the inner, lower, irrational, very emotional being that doesn't even want to have a choice to make. And having to battle with that within yourself at such a young age, not knowing exactly which culture group you fit into, right, brought me all the way back. Like I had to do a 360 really and go back to my origin, right? My source being my parents, and ask them, basically, who am I? What were your plans that you had for me? Where do you envision me being? Where do I sit in this construct of a family that we have? Um, and that was where I found my confidence, really, to voice myself. We mentioned the term identity, which is very important, right? That is where I started learning about the history of my family, where my grandfather came from, what he did, my grandparents on my mother's side. I think all of those tie into who you currently are. And having that knowledge gives you that first step into the real world, right? When you start realizing and living life intentionally and meaningfully, knowing that you have all this prior knowledge of those that existed before you and who you are currently and how you can live out their destiny, their dreams in your name. Really.
There's so much there that you just laid out. I would love to pick some of it apart because I think it's critically important, especially for people who maybe don't have family roots. Maybe they're raised in the system, born in to parents who weren't present, or incarcerated. They ended up in foster care, or people who don't have deep cultural significance attached to their families. There's just kind of this big shrug, like, I don't know, we're just, I'm thinking in America, like, I don't know, we're white, we're a bunch of mutts. Like you can't point to a culture to, that's anchored in a country of origin, or even just traditions that the family has done over years, besides, we go to church on Christmas. It's like, so how does, I guess, you've gone through this great personal growth process. You've wrestled with these seemingly opposing forces. You're learning how to reconcile and hybridize things. What would you say to somebody who's maybe not sure how to start the journey, where they're like, yeah, I know there's something deep within me. I don't know what my identity is. Maybe I was abused or neglected, or I was hurt by religion, or I missed out on a great education. And now here I am, I'm a young adult, age, whatever. And I want to find out who I am, but I'm terrified. Right. What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough question, and I can only answer it from, my experience and, the lens which I've been fortunate to look through, to see through. So I would say self-love, right? And unpacking self-love, it would look like building some form of independence, right? And still being dependent on certain aspects as well. So this individual would probably feel very isolated, meaning there's no sense of dependency on anything, no sense of independence from anything either. And they need to start building on that. So start creating structures that you can depend on, right? Sometimes the family unit is very dysfunctional, right? You mentioned broken families in the United States. It's a very unfortunate situation, but when you start looking at building dependency, I believe the opportunity lies in friendships. The opportunity lies in connections, just communicating with another person, right? Building this routine that will enable you to depend on this person, not for something drastic like a roof over your head, but rather depend on them just for that, hi, how are you today, right? That connecting with another person, another human being, that throws you way out of your isolation already, right? And then looking at your independence. People, I believe, especially for me, I needed to feel useful. I needed to feel like I was doing something, right? And that's where my independence started building. I started thinking of how can I make a long lasting impact, right? And have a life where I can look back on and say, I lived this fruitfully. I did something, right? And in building independence, you got to start looking at your core, what it is that you're able to do without anybody else's help, right? So you're looking at your core skills, you're looking at your passions, you're looking at your interests, right? And you're looking at how can you leverage that to your advantage. And being independent is mostly associated with, living this free life where no one is able to tell you what to do, or you have no constraints. It's I'm doing my best, it's me and I don't care. But you're independent, working towards building some form of love in what it is that you're doing, right? So you're not just doing anything, you're working at how can I be more appreciative of myself through my independence.
Where did
So,
you? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
so what I did, right? Sorry, but
Yeah.
how I really like leveraged my independence was building on my passions. Right? I love playing soccer,
Mm-hmm.
and through soccer, I realized that I was able to form those dependencies as well. Right? So I was independently doing something meaningful, and at the same time, I'm forming dependent structures where I'm meeting up with players on the field, and you're sharing the soccer ball, you're passing it to the next man, and you're building this community, and there's a sense of self-love that starts to develop there.
That's
Right?
pretty awesome. Where did you? It's what I'm hearing here is a concept of interdependence, right? So there's
Like that.
it's not the binary of independence or dependence. There's an interdependence, which
Absolutely.
we all really desire. I'm wondering where you learned this concept. Who taught this to you? How did you find it? Was this formal education, or is this something that you encountered in counseling, formal counseling itself, or does your parents teach you? Where'd this come from? So this is deep. This is deep stuff, and you're not an old dude. You're a super smart dude, but this is not a normal conversation that we usually have on this level. Like, I haven't talked to too many people who talk like you.
Like that. You just, thanks for all the kind words. So you asked the question, and here's the honest truth. In 2015, I lost my father, right? And that sent me into a mode of deep reflection, right? I literally isolated myself, and I had four walls around me, and I started asking the question, why, right? And, you're just bouncing back and forth. Your emotions are up, they're down. You're lost. And I was fortunate enough to have a very good support structure through my mom, my brothers and sisters, to enable me to start thinking like rationally again. And I started thinking of this question of why, and if I could build out the word why, an abbreviation, right? And I abbreviated the why as to who helps you, right? And I started thinking, who helps you, right? Firstly, you got to help yourself before anyone can ever even try to help you, right? And in helping myself, I started reflecting on my past behavior. what was it that I was doing? What were the reasons behind some of my actions? What were the possible reasons behind the tragedy of having lost my dad? And having a guy like, or just, David Brooks, he's very, very good at thinking and positioning the individual in life. And he mentioned something along the lines of moments, so broadening our horizons, right? And he said moments of struggle coupled with moments of love, right? And putting those two together enables you to broaden your horizon and see a better day, or just see some lights at the end of that tunnel. And I started thinking of concepts, right? Of how can I be independent within that space. And I started writing, just jotting down notes as to what am I thinking of and what are the reasons behind all of this. And of course, tapping into some philosophy like Adam Swift. They speak of higher and lower beings. You start seeing the world as a place where you can thrive, as opposed to a place that you must suffer from the consequences. I mean, we all make mistakes, right? And we learn from those mistakes. And it's like a switch. I flipped and I started seeing the world in a way which I'd never seen it before. So if something bad happens, I try and look at the good that could potentially be thought of out of that bad. And the tragedy for me was having lost my dad. And I started thinking of, what were the good things that can be drawn from this.
How did he die?
I really haven't spoken about this. My dad, so he was murdered.
Wow.
In his home, in Angola, in the Norwegian province. Just a normal day. We're expecting him to come home. So we live in the capital city, and he had a house in the province where he worked, and so he would commute over the weekends. And on a Friday, he just didn't arrive, and we were ringing his phone. We got no answers, so my mom and I decided to drive down. This was like around 4, 5 in the morning. We arrived at his place. We didn't see his car, so we assumed, okay, he must have, left. We probably crossed each other on the way. So we drove back home, and he hadn't arrived. So we called the police. We asked them to, do a wellness check on him, and that's when they discovered his body.
Was it a robbery or a burglary, or was it something else?
Yeah, nobody knows yet, and our police systems and justice systems in Africa, they're not as well built out as they are compared to other countries, and he was in a very remote community as well. Till this day, we haven't. There are no answers as to what happened and the reasons why.
No wonder you would ask the question why. I mean, you literally don't know, and there's nothing obvious, and it's very frustrating. And what a horrible vacuum to leave behind. Even in 5 years now, you don't have any answers. It's a lot of mystery there. So, I mean, not to be callous, I want to like leverage this into a conversation about being able to embrace mystery and live in peace, not knowing. Is that some part of your journey? Have you encountered that particular concept?
Yeah. So another kind of philosophy or kind of rule that I live by is venturing into the unknown, right? Everybody will say this, we're all so stuck in our comfort zones that we just want to get by, and getting by is not enough, especially for young Black people. In my context, the system has deprived us, systematically set us back, and had made us feel like getting by is great. Getting by is the best thing you can do for yourself.